You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Radio Show, only on Financial News and Talk. Now live in studio, your host, local and national real estate expert and consumer advocate, Ron Siegel.
And hello again. Welcome to Ron Siegel Radio. This is the show with no real boundaries as we discuss current events, financial markets, politics, sports, even poking fun of the rest of the media. This is the show that connects the dots of confusion, delivered by conflicting media reports. We connect the dots so you know the actions you can take, how your family or business can benefit in current events most of all. Thank you for joining me. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day. We have a very focused show. We only chat about items that affect the roof over your head, your bank account, and anything I feel would benefit you. But before we get into our intriguing content today, please join me in welcoming our featured guest, repeat offender. Welcome back. Alton Moore is with us. Welcome.
How's it going, Ron? Thank you for having me back again.
The newly married Alton Moore.
That's right.
Off the market.
No longer on the market.
No longer on the market.
Don't tell my wife. I forgot my ring today. So.
Well, you know something? Maybe if you're lucky. Well, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't listen to this show, so you know I can get away with things. Every once in a while, she listens in, and I'll get a text message from her. But more often than not, she's not listening. So you know what? You'll find this out, Alton. I'm 37 years into, or 36 years into a life sentence. So they don't listen.
Don't worry. My wife might say the opposite. She might say I don't listen to her. But
okay.
Yeah, if she's listening, she might give me something to think about when I get home.
So you've got selective hearing and you didn't select.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
You'll learn, Alton. You'll learn. You're newlywed. You will learn. Hey, let me remind you, if you ever have any home or finance related questions, I am the consumer advocate looking out for you. And you can reach out to me directly, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or ronsiegelradio.com. Just remember, that's the number you call anytime for assistance. When you call that number, it comes directly to me first. There are operators standing by.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Well, I do have a great team. When it comes to developing a financing plan or a plan to save you money, I personally work with you. Even if you don't have any needs today, save this number in your phone for future reference, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. And yes, of course, we are celebrating today. We celebrate every day on Ron Siegel Radio. Let's see what we have to celebrate today. Well, you know something? I'm not sure I like this one. Today's National Dark Chocolate Day. Now, I love chocolate. There's only one time that I'm really a big fan of dark chocolate. You know, put it with a glass of wine after dinner. Then I might be, okay with dark chocolate. Milk chocolate for me, if you don't mind. So we'll go. We like that one. Today is also National Baked Alaska Day. So we like that one as well. Baked Alaska. Having beaten anorexia, I'm always up for stuff like Baked Alaska. That's a good one right there. So if you're not familiar with it, ice cream and cake. They came together on February 1st in celebration called National Baked Alaska Day. So I do like that one. So we're going to go with those two for the day. So today we've got a very, very, very special broadcast for you. Not because I'm here. I mean, I do this every day. And Alton comes and shares with us frequently. And I should tell you before we get too far along, Alton Moore is an attorney and a CPA. We are not, shouldn't say we. He is not giving legal advice today. He's helping educate. So no legal advice here today. If you've got questions from a legal standpoint, if you want individual advice, that's what Alton does for a living. And now he's got to work twice as hard because he's married. So give him a call at his office. You can call me at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. Happy to put you in touch with Alton. But, as I get older, I tell folks all the time, I started doing radio back in 2010, and it was something out there that I wanted to just educate the marketplace. And I love this idea of educating the marketplace. And what do I want to talk about? I lead a lending team. I'm involved in real estate. If I had to talk 5 or 6 days a week about mortgages and real estate, I would want to pretty much go out there and probably shoot myself. Yeah, would not be fun. But here's the issue. We're getting older. And the things that were very, very viable and valuable to me in 2010, they're still important. And don't get me wrong, we still want to know about real estate. We will still want to know about finances and mortgages and taxes and disinheriting the IRS and insurance and bankruptcy and divorce, all the things we talk about on Ron Siegel Radio. But as we get older and older, there's something that we don't talk about. It's death. And one of the subjects that's come up, because I've had so much in our sphere, my wife and my sphere, in the last 6 weeks or so, of folks passing, everywhere from our contemporaries. Fraternity brother of mine passed away recently, and that really hits home when you go to school together, and all the way up to all kinds of others. So here's the issue. What do you do with it? How do you deal with that? And I'm not getting into the emotional side, and I'm not going to get into the religious side. Everyone has to deal with that on their own. But here's the topic. A loved one died. Now what? Financially speaking, you got to plan for these things. And I'm going to share with you something I say all the time. A living trust, estate planning trust, is probably one of the greatest gifts you can give your kids. If you've got kids, if you've got grandkids, if you've got assets, everyone has a estate plan. Everybody. The question is, who designed it? Did you design it, or did the government design it? It's just that simple, because if you die, well, when you die, I don't think it's an if anymore, but when you die, who's going to deal with your stuff? Who's going to take care of your kids? Who's going to take care of your house, your assets, your pets, all that? Well, the state has a plan, and I don't know if that's who you really want to be dealing with it. So there's two different paths if you decide you don't want, well, if the state's going to deal with it, that's called probate. So you're going to die, and I'm going to give you a little background before Alton and I get into this conversation. And I'm telling it to you from my perspective, just having been on this earth for 60 years, gone through this many times. And Alton's going to tell me where I go wrong and where I'm right. And, if I'm not going to go there. So, but the bottom line is if you die without a trust, and you've got a house and you've got a car and you got kids, your stuff's going to probably go through probate. And the government's going to decide, and it's going to cost a lot of money. So, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm going to give you an idea. They don't care about your debts. The government doesn't care about your debts. They don't even care about their own debts, but that's a different story. Right? So you've got a house in Orange County, California, where we know the median home price is $1,060,000 plus. So right there, probate, if that's the only thing you have, probate's going to probably cost you, give or take, $50,000.
It can get that high. So there's certain levels. And just to kind of explain what Ron's talking about here. So the way probate fees work, it's a statutorily imposed set of rates that's based upon fair market value. So you start off with one
rate. That's a fancy word that says that the government decided.
Yeah, the government's already decided.
Impose the amounts.
So, and then what can happen is if there's issues with the estate, that attorney can apply for extraordinary fees and double the amount of their compensation. So in your situation, it is feasible that $1 million, $1.5 million estate in Orange County can cost up to $50,000. It is not out of this question.
Okay. A trust costs significantly less, maybe 10% of that or less. Just throw that out there. We're not going to get into money and all that kind of stuff on this part. The probate takes about 12 months, maybe longer than that. You've got to go through all kinds of stuff. You can't even really do anything other than pay bills for the first 3 months. Okay, so because from our lending team and real estate team, we deal with probate quite a bit on the real estate side. The estate gets to pay the bills, right? Can't sell the house. You can't do any of these things. You don't have those opportunities. That's probate, not the way you want to go. Now, the part that we're going to talk about today is the best gift you can give your kids or your estate or your heirs is a trust. And we're going to get deep into that. Now, listen to the broadcast today. We're not going to go through a lot of our normal formatting that you're used to. It's going to be real intense. That I've got probably 75 questions that Alton and I are going to go over, and we're going to do that in 40 minutes. You're listening to Ron Siegel Radio, discussing your real estate current events and the financial markets. When we come back, it's Alton and Ron talking about your stuff. A loved one died. Now what? Financially speaking, you can reach me anytime off here, number 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or RonSiegelRadio.com. Facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you miss any part of our broadcast, shame on you. But the replay is available. Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube. Ron Siegel, the number 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio. Your home and mortgage connection.
79% of all credit reports have errors that should be corrected through factual disputing. You could be saving thousands every year if your report was accurate. CreditSanitizer.com provides a free credit report audit when you furnish a specific $1 credit report. You can use this information to request corrections to your report and potentially save thousands of dollars. Get your free credit audit at CreditSanitizer.com. That's CreditSanitizer.com for a free credit report audit. CreditSanitizer.com.
You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here's Ron.
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. This segment being brought to you by our friends at Geneva Financial. When you're ready for that next home loan, Geneva's got the programs and the products. You just need to make the call, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. Talking this morning, Alton Moore, attorney and CPA, not giving legal advice or tax advice here on Ron Siegel Radio, educating us. We're having a conversation. A loved one died. Now what? Financially speaking. Morning, Alton.
Good morning, Ron.
Okay, so let's talk about it here. We're going to assume there's a trust and it's been funded. We know that a lot of trusts are not funded.
Correct.
So then if you have a trust and you're not sure if it's funded properly, talk to the attorneys and talk to a title agent, and they'll be able to look on title on your property and see if it's titled properly.
Correct.
Now, we're not going to get into this morning. We're not going to talk about the small children, and we're not focusing on who's going to take care of them. That's all can be dealt with in the trust.
Yes, that can be.
Right? So if you've got kids, who's going to take care of them? Where are they going to live? Where are they going to stay? You should have a conversation with the loved ones that you're hoping will take care of them. If you've got a special needs child, you need to talk about that with your trust attorney.
Yes, correct. So trust can be specially formatted so that if you were to pass, you can appoint a person.
And we don't know anybody that has not figured out how to pass.
Yeah, exactly. There's nobody. There's only two things that are certain in life, and that's why I deal in this business: is death and taxes.
Everybody has to talk to you. Sometime you're going to get them all.
Yeah, exactly. At one point or another. But so within a trust, if you have special needs offspring, you can provide for them. You could set up a trust that's going to be for their benefit after you pass away that provides for them. And you'll be able to appoint a third party. It could be a family member. It could even be a professional who's, specialized in this area or field to take care of your children and direct them on how to take care of them as well. So you have a lot of flexibility for protecting your children if they do have special needs. But you do have to have that trust in place, because if you don't, then again, those assets will just pass to them directly unless you have a will or something like that in place that could take care of it.
And that can also impact their ability to get benefits from the state and the federal government if it's not done correct.
Correct.
So we're going to move on from there. Now, in the trust, while we're living, the trust is going to have some designations.
Correct.
Right? So we're going to have powers of attorney.
Yes.
POA.
So it's a good question, and I think this is a good point of where things kind of get mixed up. So just to give a general explanation, you generally have 4 documents in a trust and estate plan. 1, the main document is the trust. 2 is actual durable power of attorney. You have an advanced healthcare directive, and then a pour-over will. We'll just talk about the first 2. So within a trust, you're going to have a trustee. Generally, when you're alive and it's your trust, you are the trustee. You manage your assets for your benefit, right? And then you name a successor trustee so that when you pass away, that person could step in, manage, and distribute those assets to the beneficiaries. However, the trust only covers, and that trustee only covers assets that are inside the trust. It cannot cover financial decisions in your personal name or assets you have outside the trust. So that's why you have a durable power of attorney. If you become incompetent and you can't act for yourself anymore, you now appoint this person who can sign contracts in your name and make financial decisions in your personal name and sign on your behalf. So that's why you need the 2, and that's a good distinguishment between the 2 as well.
Now, there's one other that I want to ask you about, because I think that You have the durable power of attorney, but
Correct.
wouldn't you also, or might you not have a medical power of attorney, or is that part of the durable?
No, so you're correct. So that's a separate document, and that's the Advanced Healthcare Directive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So essentially, if you become incompetent, a vegetable, or if you pass away, you can essentially direct this person, who's generally the same person as the trustee and the durable power of attorney. Most people opt to have those three people as the same person. You direct them on how you want to be taken care of. Do you want life-sustaining treatment? Do you want the plug pulled? How do you want your ashes to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Things along those lines. It all goes inside that document, which is separate from the trust and the durable power of attorney.
Now, once a loved one passes, does that mean that do you still have that durable power of attorney authorities?
So no, because the durable power of attorney and advanced health care directive only operate for the person while they're alive.
Okay.
Now, what happens is when a person passes, there's two typical documents that come into play. One is the trust, right? You name a successor trustee. That person, when you pass away, steps in and can manage all the assets in the trust and distribute it to the beneficiaries. Also, you will likely have, as part of a general estate plan, will have a pour over will where you'll name an executor, right? And so essentially it allows that person to operate. The executor operates for assets in your personal name. The successor trustee operates over assets that are held within the trust as well. So that's how you distinguish between the few documents there.
Now, from a non-legal standpoint, this is just going to be from your consumer advocate and friendly radio host. I'm going to recommend, if you've got somebody that's ill in your family, get a person, probably the trustee or a successor trustee, added to one of their personal bank accounts, and keep that open. So that's a joint account, and keep that open for years and years and years and years, even after one's gone. You don't know if you're going to come across a class action lawsuit that they may get a benefit of, and you got a check comes in. Now you can deposit those things. You have someplace to go. Also, in the period of time from the end of life until everything is settled and you've got the trust working properly, then you might have some need for funds, and then you have access to them real simple that way. So just from that perspective. Now, Alton, I want to get into the next thing I want to talk about is the trustee. So you've got a successor trustee here, and there's a lot of beneficiaries.
Correct.
Discuss the idea of a fiduciary.
So a trustee actually is a fiduciary. So
what is a fiduciary?
So somebody who holds obligations to act for the benefit of those who they've been engaged by. And in the context of a trust, it's for the beneficiaries. So the trustee is this appointed person who has these fiduciary duties upon them to act for the benefit of those beneficiaries. It's dictated by California law. It's dictated by the terms in the trust. And if they commingle their funds, distribute assets for their own benefit, those beneficiaries can sue them. And California has provided a lot of remedies underneath just statutory law and then also underneath the terms of the trust. So those beneficiaries can be compensated.
I'm going to throw a quickie at you. So here's one that I heard earlier. It was last year, maybe the year before. Gentleman dies, got a large estate, and he had named one of his kids as the successor trustee.
Yep.
And her comment was, I don't want to settle the estate right now because it would put me in a bad tax position personally.
Yes. So it's kind of a misnomer, right? So what happens? So right now, and maybe some of you know about the estate tax or the death tax here in America. If somebody has an estate, a single person over $12 million, everything over that is subject to a tax of 40%, right? Married couple, it's 24 million, right? So, that's probably a small percentage of the population. But what happens is that actually when those people who created the trust pass away, those assets, their tax basis gets stepped up to fair market value. So if you don't have that estate tax, and now you have all these assets that have their income tax basis stepped up to fair market value, they can actually sell all those assets, assuming they do it relatively quickly, without incurring a capital gain. Or
we're going to talk about step up in a bit, but the biggest question I have there is, can the successor trustee delay the liquidation of assets because it's not good in their own personal life?
No,
from a taxation standpoint.
So here's what I would say. It's going to depend upon the terms of the trust, but generally speaking, it requires for a reasonable amount of time. If you look at California law, maybe that's just depending upon the personal circumstances, could be a year. Let's just say the trust has a bunch of title issues, all these things that they actually have to sort out before they can distribute it, right? That's reasonable. But if it's not reasonable and they're just holding on to it, the beneficiaries can actually sue the trustee, right, for violating their fiduciary duties and not, acting in the beneficiary's best interest.
So these daughters could have been in trouble there.
Yeah. Yes.
Final arrangements. Is that the successor trustee? Is that going to take care of final arrangements for the decedent?
Correct. So,
Okay.
actually, what happens is that you have the successor trustee, and then you have the executor of the will, and then the will is generally a pour over will, which is, I think, beyond the scope of this discussion. But those people generally have instructions in the trust and will that say how they want their final arrangements to be taken care of, and actually, it says, I need you to pay for my funeral expenses, pay off my final debts, pay off my taxes, and then administer everything out to the beneficiary. So it's actually on the trustee, successor trustee, and the executor, who are generally the same person, to take care of the final arrangements for the decedent.
Who gets a copy of the trust?
So only beneficiaries, only people with an interest in the trust. If it's somebody else, like if my parents were to pass away, me and my sister are named as the beneficiaries. My cousins try to get a copy of the trust. We don't have to give that to them. It's only if you're named as a beneficiary or having an interest in the assets in the trust. Otherwise, legally requiring, you don't have to give it to anybody else.
Okay. And you already mentioned the death taxes, as far as for your estate. Where are we at on those?
So right now, the estate tax exemption is $12 million per person. Now, what's interesting, and many of you probably have heard this, that the government has been trying to reduce that amount. So just to kind of give a bit of an explanation, right now it's $12 million per person. That actually is going to phase out to about $6 million per person at the end of 2025. Now, what happened in...
You've got a big estate and you're on the banana peel. Make sure it's 2024 before.
Yeah, exactly. And so right now, I don't want to go in the nuances of it. There's a lot of estate planning that's going on for people with high estates above 12 million, just because you could take advantage of some one-time tax planning opportunities. And because the government is also thinking, in which they did in proposed legislation through the Build Better Back Act, is to reduce that estate tax exemption down to 3 million, 1 million, and even potentially 0. So it applies to almost all estates in the U.S.
And, so this, you can tell there's a lot to this. We've only got through about 10% of what I want to talk to Alton about, but we're going to got to go to break. And we're going to talk when we come back. When do we tell the bank real property? How do we deal with it? Who's going to tell the financial advisor, family businesses, other assets? We've got all this stuff to still talk about. You can reach me anytime. Our off-air number, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or ronsiegelradio.com, facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you miss any part of our broadcast, Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube. Ron Siegel, the number 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio. Your home and mortgage connection.
Is your budget getting blown up with high prices of gas and increased costs for other household needs? This is Ron Siegel, host of the daily Home and Finance radio program. Did you know if you have a low interest rate mortgage along with auto debt, credit card debt, or student loans, your family could potentially save $500 or more per month by restructuring these debts? If you'd like a free Borrow Smart analysis with our team, let's book an appointment to see how we might be able to relieve some stress. Schedule your appointment at rsrbsa.com. That's RSRBSA, your free Borrow Smart analysis. rsrbsa.com.
You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here's Ron.
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. This segment being brought to you by the area trusted real estate professionals of Ron Siegel Radio. Visit rsrhomescout.com, rsrhomescout.com. Continuing our conversation, attorney and CPA Alton Moore is with us, not giving anybody legal advice, not giving anybody tax advice. Here to educate. If you want legal advice, you want tax advice, or some of the areas that we're getting into that we're at a 30,000 foot level here. If you want specifics, give me a call at 800-306-1990, and I will not give them to you, but I will give you Alton's number so he can give them to you, because that's what he does for a living. So we're going to continue this conversation, talking about some of the duties of the successor trustee. We've got a long way to go here still.
Yep.
So now I know that you're a tax guy.
Yep.
And the government never says you don't have to pay taxes, even if you're dead.
Yes.
So who's going to file my taxes when I die?
Yeah. So actually, again, so so if you have a trust, there's two sets of tax returns that need to be filed. One is you got to file the final personal return for the individual who passed away. And then thereafter, you actually have to file a trust tax return. So there's two income tax returns. And then if you have an estate over that estate tax exemption, you actually have to file that as well. Sometimes you'll file it underneath that, but it's kind of beyond the scope of this. Anyways, the person who's responsible for that is going to be the successor trustee, or if you have a pour over will as part of that, it will also be named inside there as the executor's responsibility. So
now you have two tax returns there. You've got the decedents
yes,
and the trust. Does the trust have to have its own social security number?
Yeah. So actually so it depends, but generally speaking, you would get an EIN for the trust in of itself. Now you can also file a trust as part of an estate. There's special elections for those sorts of income tax returns, but it may be better to get a separate EIN. It's not applicable for all scenarios, but it can be done.
Okay. And that's the route that we went.
Yes.
Now, I better stick to my list. Otherwise I'm going to go out in the woods here and I'll never get it all in. Yeah. Okay. So we've got the successor trustee is going to take care of the final tax return.
Correct.
And so does the trust have to file taxes every year that it's in existence, or just once?
No. So that's right. So let's say that you have a family member who passes away in December, right? So for that year, you have to file a final personal tax return for the decedent and for a trust income tax return. Then let's just say it doesn't get administered through the next year. You actually have to file another tax return until you actually administer the trust, and then you formally dissolve it as well.
Okay. So if you're setting up a trust, it's going to take care of family members for years and years.
Yes.
That's part of the expenses of the trust is taking care of that.
Correct. Yeah. Not only tax, then you have also trustee fees. The successor trustee typically is entitled to reasonable compensation, which could be statutorily imposed, could be specified inside there. So you just have a lot of ongoing fees with trusts that continue for years if you're going to take care of somebody for a long period of time.
So you can control your funds from the next world. You just have to have somebody help you do it.
Yep.
When do I tell the bank?
So actually so if you have a trust, and let's just assume that the trust is funded properly, the accounts are in the name of the trust. All you have to do is you bring in a copy of the death certificate and the trust and say, I'm the successor trustee. I'm taking care of these. Now I essentially have bank signing authority, right? My recommendation would be to start to do this as soon as you possibly can, right? You have to get a copy of the death certificate.
Certified death certificate.
Which we were talking about, right? It takes about 1 to 2 weeks to get. Once you get it, then you can actually get access and tell the bank immediately, because, I mean, I'm sure you're going to know this, right? The estate is likely to have ongoing expenses. Maybe there's a property with a mortgage. Maybe there's property taxes. Maybe there's just other bills that need to be paid. So you should do it almost as soon as possible so that you could pay those bills. And so the estate itself or the trust doesn't go into default with just outstanding debts.
I hate to see your real estate go into default because you're waiting to try and get these documents taken care of with the bank.
Correct.
So you want to make sure you get that over. And the bankers are all well aware of it. You're not going to go to the teller at the teller window. You're going to generally want to make an appointment with a manager of vice president or something like that.
Correct.
To go and talk to one of them and bring a copy of the certified death. Now, a certified death certificate,
yes,
you can actually get as many of those as you want to pay for.
Yes, correct. I believe it's $5 a copy or something like that. So you can get as many as you need. You might want to get 2 or 3 off the bat just because there might be certain reasons you need to provide it to other parties. I
think we got 10 and we didn't use them all, but at least we had them.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you don't want to have to go back and start getting more and more.
No.
Who do you get those from?
So I believe it's I'm forgetting the name of the agency. It's a healthcare agency that's located in.
I think the attorney that helped us took care of ours, but it might have been the mortuary. I'm not sure who it was that as you're going through this, unfortunately, you'll get all these questions come to you. Our mission here is just to try and give you some things to think about.
Yes.
Because it's all going to happen at some point in time.
Correct.
And I already mentioned to you that whoever the successor trustee is, as you're getting toward that final chapter, just become a joint holder on one of the active bank accounts. That way, while you're waiting for that week that Alton talked about to get the certified death certificate, you still have to pay for the burial and you're going to pay for the mortuary or whatever you're doing.
Yep.
Okay, so now we're going to get into some deeper things. Real property, Alton. Okay, so we already jumped the gun on part of it. We know that the successor trustee is the one that has to pay the bills and pay the
Yes,
mortgage.
correct.
Okay, tell us, what is a step up in basis?
Yeah, so step up in basis, a lot of you are probably familiar with this. So when a person passes away, what actually happens is that those assets receive a step up in income tax basis. So, typically the way people think about this is like, if I bought a property 10 years ago for 100,000 and now it's worth 200 and I were to sell it, I have $100,000 gain, right? That $100,000 I bought it for is my tax basis. Now in that same scenario, let's just say instead of the decedent selling it, they held on to it till they died. Now their tax basis goes up from 100,000 to 200,000, or equal to fair market value. So what it allows it to do, and the reason why the government did this, is to allow for the efficient administration of estates to sell property, right? To not essentially hold up capital from flowing through in the market. So, when a person passes away, it is very imperative that you get appraisals of real estate so you can prove out that actual step up in basis. Because let's just say you administer the estate, you sell it, the IRS might challenge that. So you need a date of death appraisal, right? But that is a step up in basis. And that's why you'll hear people say you'll only escape taxes when you die. That is really one of the only surefire ways in the US to do that.
Here's the question I have for you is, when I settled my mom's estate,
Yes.
we had two pieces of property to sell. Both of them got a step up in basis.
Yep.
One property we had to get a appraisal as of the date of death, I believe.
Correct.
The other property we didn't.
Yep.
Because we sold it immediately.
Yep.
And they said that we had, if there was a sale within 6 months.
Correct.
Is that still the time frame?
Yeah. So so what happens is that within the step up, there's like an alternate valuation date. So you can have the date of death or value that's 6 months down the road. But theoretically, if you sell that property within that 6 month period, that's a period in time in which you can have the step up in basis apply to. So in that scenario, when you sold it within the 6 month period, the sale itself was, representative of an appraisal for which you could sell.
That's what the real value was, because some
Yeah.
willing buyer was willing to pay a willing seller.
Exactly. So,
Now, here's the fun of that, Alton, that I'm going to throw at you. So we sell this property, and it was a property that my mom had bought in, I think, the 1980s.
okay.
And we sell it in 2018, 19, somewhere in there.
Wow. So big gain. Or
Big
would
gain.
have been a big gain.
Right.
Yeah.
So my mom got a step up when my dad passed.
Yep.
And we got another step up when she passed.
Correct.
And we used our favorite realtor to sell it. So we actually showed a loss on the sale of the property. Right? Because
Which is great. Yeah.
Because we had the selling expenses.
Exactly.
Is that still the way we do it?
Yeah. Oh, so
Okay.
that is still the exact same way that it's done now. So what you would actually show is you'd show a capital loss in that scenario, right? So if you have other capital gains, I know 2022 is a little funky. People probably had capital losses, just the way the market worked. But you get that, you get offset other capital gains, or you carry it forward to future years in which you can use it. So
Cool. Okay. Now, here's the other part is when my mom passed, we actually had to change title
yes.
on each of her properties.
Yeah. So I guess that's an interesting point. So what could you have a lot of flexibility within a trust. So assuming, all right, so the big issue is people don't put property in a trust, but let's assume that it was in there.
It's all in the trust.
So you can actually sell it within the trust first, right? Or you could distribute it out into each of your personal names and then sell it thereafter. So
I think we had to, what we were advised to do, and I'll see if this is the way we still do it, because obviously laws change all the time.
Yep.
Right. So we were advised that we keep it in the trust, being that we knew we were going to liquidate it.
Yep.
But we had to file with the county recorder.
Yes.
That there was a new successor trustee.
Correct.
So it's still in the same trust name.
Yes.
But it had successor trustee of A, and now it's successor trustee of B.
Correct. Yeah. So because otherwise, so title insurance, if they see something like that, they actually won't insure a property unless the correct successor trustee is listed on there. So you essentially prepare a new grant deed, or there's also an affidavit of death that you could file that just updates the deed so that the person signing off or listed as the trustee is the correct person, or now the successor trustee.
Now, what about can a beneficiary keep the property?
Yeah. So typically the trust provides a lot of flexibility to the trustee to distribute, equal shares. That's generally what people do. So what you could do is, if the beneficiaries want this and they work with the trustee, one kid could get the property and then another kid could just get all cash, right? They have to somehow equalize the value. And sometimes in that case, like maybe there's a loan taken against the property. So the net value that's given is equal to 100,000. And then the cash from the loan given to the kid is worth, the other kid is worth 100,000. So you can keep the property, but again, it will really depend upon the terms of the trust. A trust can be so flexible. Like there's so many ways that somebody could go about it that, a parent could dictate, I want you to sell this property. I don't want them to keep it. Or they could say the opposite. I want them to keep this property as a rental property in this trust for an X period of time. Like
that means that the successor trustee is going to be managing it or hiring somebody to manage it.
Correct.
And deal with the taxes of it for whatever time period that is.
Exactly.
God, there's a lot to this, but who takes care of the maintenance of that property?
Yeah. So again, it's on the trustee. So typically the trustee is not going to do it all themselves, right? You're not going to see, just Joe Schmo going out there doing the landscaping and whatnot. They're going to, within the trust, they have the flexibility to hire like a property manager, or if they
daughter one is now the gardener.
Yeah. Exactly. Or they could just hire the people to do it and they just pay out of it from the proceeds or the income in the trust as well.
Great information. Hey, you know something? We got one of our favorite miracle listeners, Michelle Patterson. Glad you're tuning in, Michelle, and I've got to get you back on the radio again. It's been a long time since Michelle's been on. We appreciate you, and Michelle's got a great story there. So glad to have you tuning in this morning. You're listening to Ron Siegel Radio, discussing your real estate current events and the financial markets. When we come back, more with Alton Moore. We've still got more topics about on our subject today. A loved one died. Now what, financially speaking? We're going to continue that conversation. You can reach me anytime. Our off-air number, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or ronsiegelradio.com, facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you miss any part of our broadcast, Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube. Ron Siegel, the numeral 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio. Your home and mortgage connection.
Do you know a homeowner experiencing divorce? Do you know a real estate reference and the divorce decree could cost tens of thousands of dollars? A certified divorce mortgage planning and real estate report could save you thousands of dollars, and it's free from your local certified divorce lending professional. Reach out to Ron today. RonIsMyLender.com. Again, RonIsMyLender.com. Licensed under NMLS 217037, Equal Housing Lender.
You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here's Ron.
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That's my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio anytime at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. Continuing our conversation this morning, we are chatting. It's a very special broadcast. Before I get to that, this segment is being brought to you by our friends at creditsanitizer.com. You have a credit report, it is wrong. What are you doing about it? Credit Sanitizer, they've got the solutions for you. Topic today, we're going a little off our normal format because it's a big topic and it's happening all over. Every one of us will experience it at some point in time if you do it the right way. A loved one died. Now what, financially speaking? And we made the assumption early on that you've already done the right thing and you've got a trust and it's funded properly and you've checked to make sure it's funded properly. And if you don't know how to check and make sure it's funded properly, give us a call. We'll help you with that. And we are not giving legal advice, although Alton Moore is a lawyer. He is a CPA. We're not giving legal advice. We're educating today from a very high level. So you have an idea here. Talk to your own CPA and tax people and attorneys, or give me a call at 800-306-1990. I'm still not going to give you any advice, but I'll give you Alton's number. That's the advice I give. So we've talked about the duties of the trustee, the successor trustee, the powers of attorney, when that power of attorney ceases. We've talked about telling the bank. We've talked about real property. Now we're just getting into plain old dollars, right? So who tells the financial advisor, and how do we deal with, if I've got a stockbroker or a 401k and all that, who's going to talk to these people, Alton?
Yeah. So actually, again, it's going to be the successor trustee, because if the trust is properly funded, actually your not your retirement accounts, your investment accounts, your brokerage accounts, they actually are in the name of your trust, right? So theoretically, successor trustee, steps in, tells the financial advisor, okay, we've now, the person.
Mrs. Jones passed.
Mrs. Jones has passed. And so now here's what we need to do to distribute everything out, right? So you'll actually work with that financial advisor. And what you'll want to do, again, because we talked about the step up in basis, is have them help you get valuations on all your investments as of the date of passing as well. So you can establish what your tax basis is. And then if you want it, so this is a great opportunity. Especially with just the appreciation that we've experienced in the stock market over the past 20 years. In this case, you get those valuations. A lot of people will have invested in Cisco or Apple or something like that a number of years ago, and they never sold their stock because they had this extremely large gain sitting there. You get those valuations, you get the step up in basis working with your stockbroker, and then you sell them, right? This is the perfect time to sell those highly concentrated positions and reinvest them into more diversified portfolios. So long and the short of your question, successor trustee is the one who will actually be responsible for that.
Yeah, and you don't have to reinvest it. You just have to have the amount and know what the value is in that step up in basis.
Yep.
And that's going to be based on what we call qualified or non-qualified accounts.
Yeah, so that's
the difference with non-qualified account is not your non-retirement.
Correct.
It's a fancy way of saying non-retirement account.
Yes, so like your normal brokerage account, right? So now for qualified accounts,
that's your retirement, your 401k, your IRA, your SEP, all those things.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so you actually, in those accounts, you actually don't get a step up in basis when the person passes away. So, and actually typically you don't put a retirement account into a trust, right? Because when somebody passes away, there's a required minimum distribution period that's accelerated to about 5 years when you have a 401k, traditional IRA, things along those lines inside of it. So just from a general estate planning perspective, and actually what you can do, and that's an exception of probate, is you list the beneficiary on the account, which could be your kids, right? So you don't have to put it inside there. And then it actually lengthens to about, I think after the Secure Act, I think it's about 10 years now, over the period of time which you have to take out those distributions from your 401k or IRA, so that you can, spread out the taxable income from that, because you're not getting a step up in a qualified account.
Okay, so those qualified accounts are not going in the trust.
Correct. So typically we don't put them in the trust just because it shortens that required minimum distribution period, which means you have to recognize more income faster. Whereas like if you don't have it inside the trust, then you have a longer period of time to pull those monies out, right? And recognize, or at least mitigate your tax impact or plan for it over those 10 years.
And generally, as Alton said, when that account was opened, every brokerage that I know of, they're going to ask, okay, who's the beneficiary? And probably, they generally ask it like 3 layers deep.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So who's the beneficiary? And frequently it's going to be the spouse.
Yes.
And who's after the spouse? And then might be the kids.
Yep.
And it's going to say, okay, I like Johnny better than Scotty, so I'm going to give him 70% and 20%, and
yes,
Mary gets 10%, or whatever the numbers are. They can do it evenly. They can break it out whatever they want.
Exactly.
And then if something happens there, then there's another layer. And that usually, the ones I've seen have always had 3 layers.
Yeah, typically it is 3 layers. And then again, you have the flexibility to dictate as many beneficiaries and how much you want to give to each beneficiary within those accounts. So, when you're setting up your estate plan specifically for those, like we will generally tell our client, like, hey, you're going to want to reach out to your stockbroker or whoever manages this account and tell them to set up the beneficiaries in the same way that you've set them up inside this trust.
Now, we don't want to get too much into the tax planning. We're dealing with post-death right now. Insurance.
Yes.
So how does the insurance fit? Because I know some people use insurance to help cover the taxes on their qualified account.
Yeah. So there's actually a few ways to go about this. So what you're thinking of is it's called life insurance, right? So it's a very unique strategy. So where you actually set up an irrevocable trust separate from your general estate plan, and you put a life insurance policy in there. And essentially what it's set up to do, you can't specify this in the trust, right? Again, I'm not giving legal advice for tax advice. I'm just telling you,
right?
You can't actually specify within that trust that it has to pay off the estate taxes or income taxes from the qualified accounts. You put it inside there and it's left for the beneficiaries. Beneficiaries can take that money and then pay off the taxes as they become due from the distributions of those qualified accounts as well.
And what that helps with, and again, no legal advice or tax advice.
Yes.
It helps if you've got an asset that's in there, especially a self-directed IRA,
Yes.
where you've got a business in the self-directed IRA. You don't want to have your heirs sell the business because they can't afford to pay taxes.
Exactly.
So this could be a method of helping with that.
Yes.
Now, Alton, you said before that we were talking about, okay, so mom and dad had a concentrated position in Cisco.
Yep.
And it's gone way, way up.
Yep.
But I don't want to sell the Cisco stock. I've got that step up in basis. Can the trustee or successor trustee just transfer that stock as is to me?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so that's where that trustee has a lot of flexibility. So again, so long as they meet, because most people will say, I want my assets distributed amongst my kids equally. So long as they distribute the fair market value of the estate equally, it doesn't matter what
You went by that real quick, and that's a key thing.
Yes.
They're distributing the fair market value of the estate equally in that sense.
Correct.
It doesn't mean that, Johnny gets a house and Mary doesn't.
Yes.
It's if they decide that that's how they want to do it, as long as the net value
is
equal.
Equivalent. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And you've got to have somebody you've got to talk to somebody who understands these things, because you don't want to transfer a piece of real estate and then realize, I didn't deal with taxes. I didn't deal with selling expenses. I didn't deal with the mortgage. Right. All those things have to be accounted for.
Yes, exactly.
As part of that equal distribution.
Correct. And actually, the language in the trust that you use is really important. I actually had a client recently where her father had provided her a down payment in a house, owned about 1/3. And in the actual trust estate planning documents, he gave his kid, equal shares, but he said against this kid, I want the 1/3 of the fair market value of that home reduced against her share.
Wow.
And it didn't say net, because there's also a loan on there which she's responsible for. So essentially, she lost anything else she should have received, and now she's taking on the full liability of the home, right? So, So it's extremely important to be very specific with the language used in the trust.
Family businesses, Alton. How do we deal with that in the trust? So
yeah.
Is that going to step up in basis too?
It does, actually.
Okay.
So typically you have to get a business entity appraisal, which you should do, right? Because now you can establish how much you could sell it for without any sort of capital gain. But you're going to want to make sure those entities are in the trust. Now, there are nuances, and it is more complex to put an entity into the trust, right? Just because the ownership through the trust, and there might be qualifications within your LLC's operating agreements or corporate bylaws, whatever it might be. But you generally want to get it inside there so that when you pass away, successor trustee can step in and automatically manage the trust or manage that business or start to sell it. And a lot of times people actually put contingency plans within their trust on who they want it to be sold to, how they want it to be managed, what they want the trustee to do with it, so that they can either keep it as a going concern or be able to sell it to the right people so that they could take advantage of it at that point.
You've gone through a lot of information here, Alton. Okay, now, so we've got the investment accounts, we've got the real estate, we've talked about the business, other assets.
Yes.
And I've got a safe full of guns and gold and silver and Krugerrands and
yeah.
How do we deal with all that?
Yeah. So actually, that part is actually the simplest thing. This could also include vehicles. So what you actually do is part of your trust and estate plan. There's this funding document called a declaration of personal property. It's essentially a one-page document that says all my personal property located at my residence or anything else that you specify in that document, I'm transferring to the trust. And then on the other side, within the trust document, there's generally an asset schedule. That's where you list all the assets that you want in the trust. And those two documents taken together is enough evidence for the court or just California's legal system to say that those assets are owned by the trust. Now, what you're going to want to do is in the actual trust document, because that's not public record, you're going to list the type of assets, their location, and their approximate value as well, so that the successor trustee and beneficiaries know what they should be looking for and where they should be looking for it. Because who knows, Ron, if you just have a pot of gold that's buried in your backyard, but you don't tell anybody or where it's located, right? They're never going to find it, then it's gone.
Right. So now let's get into some of the weeds here a little bit, Alton. And I know that we're running low on time, but I've only got a couple things, Josh, until we get this. So bills, liabilities.
Yes.
So this is we've kind of talked. The successor trustee is going to pay the credit card bills and all those things.
Correct.
What about items that may not ever be a liability of the decedent? So Grandma co-signs on a car for Johnny,
Yes.
and Johnny's been making the payments, but there's still a couple years left on the note.
Yep. So actually what happens is that when like a co-signer or a guarantor of a note passes away, typically that full amount or the liability reverts into the surviving person, right? Now there are situations, and it's going to be dependent upon the actual loan agreement and the note, where they could still try to assess that outstanding liability against the estate. But once the estate is wrapped up and distributed and no longer a thing, there's nowhere, they don't have recourse. So typically what happens, the full liability vests in the living person as well.
Go visit Grandma at Forest Lawn. You'll find you can ask her to pay you from there.
Yep.
Doesn't
It's
work.
true. Yeah, it doesn't work. If there's no turnip to squeeze blood out of, there's nothing they could do.
So how long did you spend in law school dealing with trusts and probate and whatnot?
So actually, it's not a very long period of time. I'll be honest. So, I mean, me specifically, because I had like a tax certification, business certification. So I had to take extra classes towards trust and estates and just trust and estate planning in general. But most, you get one class in law school, and then it all becomes actual practical experience after that.
And we just did it in 47 minutes.
Yeah.
That's right. So the bottom line is there's a lot more to this. There's a lot of other ways. If you've got a larger estate, there's a whole nother set of issues to deal with. If you've got a lot of people, if you've got people that don't get along, there's a whole lot more to this. All we did is scratch the surface so that you'd have a basis. And again, we did not give any legal advice or tax advice. That's not what our mission was. It was just to give you some real foundational information, because we're all at some point in time going to have a loved one that dies. And many are going to say, now what? From a financial standpoint, because we don't deal with it very often, right? If you're lucky enough, you're only going to deal with one parent. They're going to die, two parents, one mom, one dad. They're going to die one time, hopefully a long time from now. And you don't think about these things. You don't do them. So we wanted to give you just a little bit of background here so you'd have that information. And again, if you want more specifics, Alton Moore, attorney and CPA, does this for a living. I'd be happy to get you his number. And as always, I ask, set that first radio preset button to come back here and join Ron Siegel Radio, where we only speak about items affecting your house and your bank account. Thanks to all of our sponsors. A big thanks to Josh and Sean who are engineering us today. And of course, a special thanks to you for spending a little bit of your day with us. That's all for Ron Siegel Radio. Again, if you have any questions or to meet any of our guests, call me anytime, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or ronsiegelradio.com. And remember, make a lot of money so you can help a lot of people and have a lot of fun. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time on Ron Siegel Radio.